Hello, everyone. Welcome again to Sister Straight Up. Along with me, I am the co-host, and you're here with us on Sister Straight Up Real Talk. My sister Jacqueline Whitaker is also our co-host. So, in saying that, we are looking forward. We are looking forward to a wonderful time, and we are just. Hey, Jack.
Hey, how are you?
I am good. I am good.
Good. Good. I'm so glad. Yeah, we not found. Can you hear me well?
Is your mic up good?
Everything is good.
Okay.
Everything is good.
Okay. All right. So
Everything is
I'll
loud and
move up a little
everything is
bit
clear.
closer, but yes. So anyways, I was just saying to everybody that we are super happy that that is here with us today. As we know, last week we had a little bit of a glitch. So we're back and we're so thankful, blessings to our Lord and Savior. And also we want to make sure that we say thank you to my son Christian and to my niece Delilah, who actually helped us to get it back together again, all through the glory of God.
That's
And
right.
yeah, so in saying that, we just are so thankful that you all could come in and be with us today. And yeah, so we're
Yes.
asking that you continue sharing. Sharing is caring, as I always say. And also hit the like button. And please continue hitting those comments. But we want to make sure that this time when you are hitting your comments, let us know where you're coming from, what
That's right.
states that you are located, because this helps us in knowing, what states what states you're in and the
Mhm.
location that you're coming from. So as I said to you before, we want to make sure that everyone is going to be able to come through from state to state. So we're looking forward in you helping us out and doing that as well.
That's
So
correct.
today, as we get ready, as you know, last week I was pretty much the only one that was on, and I know that Jackie had some more information that she wanted to bring forward to you all as well. And our topic was breast cancer awareness.
That's
So in
right.
saying that, I'm just going to reiterate a few things that I
Hmm.
actually went over. And that was, we talked about the different types of breast cancer, and some were a little bit less common than the others. But I brought forward the different names. I won't go into that with you all because of the fact that, when you if something happens, your medical provider will provide you with whatever is necessary regarding that. So I don't want you to focus on that. I just basically wanted to bring forward some of the names so that you would be aware of them. Also, I spoke about mammograms, how important they were, monthly self checks, being very visual about your own body, the shapes, the color, the content. All of that is very critical and important for you to notice. If you see any of those changes, you want to make sure that you touch base with your medical provider, because remember, early detection is very key, and it could be a life, could save your life. So
Yes.
we
Yes.
want to make sure that we stay on top of all of that. And again, just speaking about the medical provider, group therapy, and seeking therapy if you need it, your mental health and depression. Those were just some of the things that I brought forward, and also nutrition. So
Yes.
Jackie, you can
Yes.
go forward with what information that
Yes.
you have as well.
Okay, and I think you did a wonderful job last week. A wonderful job. I'm going to start with the fact of what causes breast cancer. There are so many things, but the most important thing is that it happens when there are change in the genetic material that's in our body. Often the exact cause of this genetic change are unknown. People
Mhm.
don't know why it happens. However, sometimes genetic changes are, as you had said last week, is inherited. okay, from our families, generation after generations. So it's an inherited thing. Breast cancer that is caused by inherited genetic change is called hereditary breast cancer. Okay, you could have got it from your mother or your mother's mother or your uncles or your aunts. Okay, there is also certain genetic changes though that can raise your risk of breast cancer. And these changes are in what they call BRCA1 and BRCA2. And what is this? Well, BRCA1 and BRCA2 is genes that normally protect us against cancer. They help to repair our DNA. Okay, their whole function is to help keep the cells in our bodies from growing and dividing in an uncontrolled way, which prevents the formations of tumors. Okay, so when they're not functioning properly, they can't do their jobs. They can't suppress the tumors. And these genes will then cause you to have cancer because they're unable to repair the damaged DNA. Okay, and that's very important. So I want to make sure that people understood that. The other way of cancer, causes of cancer is, besides genetic, is our lifestyle, which I think you mentioned last week, and the environment that we live in. Okay, a lot of people live in asbestos. There's a lot of that in maybe in your homes or in your environment, or maybe you are working in an area that produces cancer. So those would be considered environmental things. There are risks that causes cancer. So what are the risks for breast cancer? Well, you mentioned last week about older age, history of breast cancer in your family, okay, which is inherited, all right? Like we talked about the BRCA1 and BRCA2 causes genetic changes. If you have a dense breast tissue, a lot of women breast is very dense. It's not as soft, it's dense. So when your doctor is palpating your breast, they can feel sometimes that it's thick there. And when they do your MRI, your mammogram, it shows a dense breast. And if you have a reproductive history that leads to more exposure to estrogen, if you have a high level of estrogen, which is made by the body, of course, that which can cause cancer as well. And especially women who are menstruating at an early age. If you're menstruating at an early age, then you have a lot of estrogen. Older age, when you give birth at an older age, or never have given birth, okay, that's a reproductive history that can lead to breast cancer. Starting menopause at a later age because you have all this estrogen buildup. Taking hormones such as estrogen combined with progesterone for symptoms of menopause is another way, is a risk, causing you a risk for breast cancer. Radiation therapy to the breast and the chest can also lead you to be a risk for breast cancer. Drinking alcohol.
Yes.
Okay, and obesity is another risk for breast cancer. So people have to really be aware of these things. Now, you mentioned signs and symptoms last week of breast cancer. You talked about having a new lump or thickening in or near your breast in the armpit. And I think it's always important that people ask your GYN doctor or your doctor, how do I examine my breasts for lumps? And that's very important. Holding your arm up, starting from the nipple area with 2 fingers and pressing and going around and going around and going around and pressing and palpating those areas, checking for any unusual lumps or something that may have been different from the day before. That's very important. And then going back to you underneath your armpits, pressing that. And you should do that every single day. That's very important to check your breast for that. Also, you mentioned a change in the size or shape of your breast. When you go to your GYN or your breast doctor, they have you hold your arm up and they check your breast and they stand back and they look at your breast. They're trying to see the size and the shape. Is there anything abnormal? Okay, because breasts are usually look the same, but you're always going to have one breast that's a little bit more larger, especially if you're either right-handed or left-handed because you use that arm a lot. That breast may be slightly larger than the other one, but that's normal. That's absolute normal. A nipple turn inward, and I think you mentioned that, into
Yes.
the breast. That's abnormal. A nipple with discharge other than breast milk, if you're having some type of fluid discharge in there, color discharge or any type of discharge, and it's not breast milk, that's abnormal. And you need to go to the doctor and take a look, have them take a look at that. Now, this discharge may happen suddenly, and it could be bloody or happen in only one breast. But it's important that you recognize that and you let your doctor know. Your breast could be scaly or red or swollen in a certain area. You mentioned that in the nipple area of the breast. That's abnormal. And pain. Pain in any of your breasts is very important. When I had my breast cancer, and I want people to know that, I didn't have any of those. But my breast felt, I had a slight soreness to it. It was sore. And I kept saying, I'm so uncomfortable in my right area. I don't know what's going on with my breast. I checked my breast constantly, but I couldn't feel not one thing. Okay, it all felt normal. I didn't have any lumps. I didn't have any of that. But I had that discomfort, like pain, like an aching in my breast. And I went to the doctor, my GYN, and he sent me to a breast specialist. Because when he examined me, he said, Jackie, I don't feel any lumps. And I said to him, I know you don't because I don't either. I said, but it's in this area and it's sore. And I said, and it aches, and it never did that before. So he says to me, I'm going to send you to a breast specialist. And he sent me to the most wonderful woman. And she examined me. She couldn't feel anything. She did an x-ray. She couldn't see anything. And even with the mammogram, it showed nothing. But I kept complaining. And she said, Jackie, she said, you know what? She says, I'm going to take you to surgery. And I'm going to see what's going on. She said, because it's not normal. I don't see anything. The mammogram don't see anything. She said, but you've never had this complaint, and it could be deep and hidden. And sure enough, it was. So when she operated on me, she saw it. And afterwards, she said to me, I was concerned. She said, I didn't know what was going on. She said, but I saw it, and I took it out, and I took it to the lab, she said. So I was lucky because it was only localized.
Right.
But I say this to tell people, which is very important. Sometimes you can palpate and not feel anything. But if you have the slight amount of discomfort or pain, you need to let your doctor know, and you need to pursue it because that's not normal. If all of a sudden that happens and you haven't bumped yourself, you haven't hit yourself, all of a sudden you wake up and you have that, that's abnormal, and you need to have it checked out. Okay. Now, the other thing is, what can decrease the risk of breast cancer? Some of the things that can decrease it is that estrogen. A lot of women that have had a hysterectomy are usually placed on estrogen, okay, because their estrogen is decreased and you need some estrogen in your body. So it's estrogen hormotherapy is very essential, and that can decrease the risk of breast cancer. Also, they may put you on a estrogen receptor, they call it. And all that is a drug that blocks or mimics the effect of estrogen in certain tissues in your breast. And sometimes one of the medications could be taxofen, they can do. And what that does, it inhibits estrogen activity, which is most important. The other thing is less exposure of your breast tissue to estrogen, which is made by the body. If you have less exposure of it, then your chances of getting cancer is less. And this could be due to early pregnancy, okay, or breastfeeding. Breastfeeding can do that. And getting enough exercise, okay, can lessen your exposure of breast tissue to estrogen. Having the following procedure also decreases your risk of breast cancer, such as a mastectomy, okay, because that reduces the risk of cancer because it's taken out, the breast is taken out. So those are just some things. Now, the other thing is, how do we diagnose breast cancer? I know you mentioned some of them. The physical exam is extremely important. Letting your doctor examine you on the table is extremely important as he palpates your breast. You examining your own breast every single day is extremely important. Imaging tests like the mammogram, ultrasound, and the MRI is very important because they can detect if there's a lump there or what's going on with your breast. And that information is sent to your doctor, and that's what the doctor then checks and say, oh, this mammogram or this test is different than your previous test. They keep comparing your various tests that you have to see if there is any changes. Because if there are changes, then they've got to react to that and put other things in place to see if it's cancer. Sometimes it can be benign, and that's wonderful. They just take it out and it's just benign. But sometimes it can also be a form of cancer. A breast biopsy, I had that done. A breast biopsy is very important where they go in and they take out the small tumor and they take out the tissue around it and then they run tests on it to see if it has any cancerous cells. That's very important that that be done. Blood chemistry is extremely important. When you go to the doctor, they take certain tests, blood from you, and they run certain tests. They look for substances in the blood. They look for your electrolytes. They look for fats. They look for proteins. They look for glucose, which is sugar, of course, and enzymes. They run specific blood chemistry levels, like the BMP. Now, the BMP is a basic metabolic panel. And this metabolic panel provides information on a variety of things. Your electrolytes, your sodium, your chloride, your blood sugar, your kidney function, your liver function, all of that is shown in your BMP, okay? So the doctor's gonna screen for that. And this, by screening for it, it monitors for chronic conditions, such as diabetes, kidney disease, check for electrolytes imbalance, because when you have cancer, it throws everything off. Everything gets thrown off. And it can detect early signs of organ dysfunction or organ failure. Your organs aren't functioning the way it should. The other test they run is what they call a CMP, and that is a comprehensive metabolic panel. And that includes everything that the BMP does, except the difference between that is that it includes all the tests in the BMP, as I mentioned, plus additional tests for functionings and protein levels. And that's for liver functioning protein levels. That's very important. They look for blood concerns like leukemia, lymphomas, and multiple myelomas, which are all cancer. So those are two tests that your doctor will run on you. You know, if you have any complaints or if he has any concerns that there may be a possibility that there are cancer. If these tests come back and they show that you have breast cancer, then other tests are studied for the cancer cells to see what kind of cells you have. So by determining what kind of cells you have, will determine your treatment modality, how they're going to treat you. Not everybody's treated the same.
Right.
Okay. And we know that tests that examine the breast, we mentioned that actually diagnoses, you talked about that. You talked about the mammograms. You talked about the blood tests, the imaging tests, all of those will determine. And I say that to women that it's extremely important that you have all of this done. Most importantly is that you check your breasts every single day. You lay down on the bed, You put one arm up. If you're going to check your left breast, you lay down, you put your left arm up, and you start to palpate from your nipple all the way around. You're palpating until you come to your chest. And then you do the underneath your armpits to see if there's any lumps there. Because many times when you have lumps in your breast, you could also have lymph nodes underneath your armpits that could be swollen, which means that the cancer could have, went to your lymph nodes, which is underneath your armpit. And that's a totally different scenario altogether. So breast cancer awareness, I'm so happy that they have it throughout the country because it's extremely important for women that we look at our breasts, that we examine our breasts, that we follow up on our doctors to make sure that we go, especially young women, every year. You need to go for your treatments. You need to go for your exams, your annual exams to see what's going on with you and your breast. And as you get older, it's extremely important too. Just because you're in your 70s and your 80s and you say, I'm not having any sex. Oh, I don't do this. I don't do that. There's nothing wrong with my breast. There could be.
Yeah,
That's the most valuable time as well, is when you're older. Okay, you've had your children, you've had all of that, or you may not have had children, but you are older now. You've gone through your menopause, or you're going through menopause. That's important that you then take the time to continue to examine your breast because your estrogen level is high during menopause. Extremely important. And that you call and you go to your doctor.
yes.
Okay, to make sure that you are well, that your body is well. Okay, because nobody else is going to do that for you but you.
Right.
So yearly examinations, please, ladies, make sure that you get that done. Self-examination, please, ladies, make sure that you get that done. And don't be fearful, because if you can find it first, this may have saved your life if you can detect it early.
That's
So
right.
it's important.
Right.
So please, and teach your daughters, okay? Teach your daughters to do the same thing. If your daughters are having their menses very early, teach them how to examine their breasts when their breast comes. Explain to them that that's part of us being females and how special we are. Okay, teach them that, because that's very important, to teach our young ladies how to examine themselves. When they're 13, 14, 15 years old and on, you've got to teach them all of that. You got to let them know how important it is, because it may save their lives one day. Young women get cancer. They get it 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. They can get cancer. Many times it's hereditary. So it's imperative that we as women take care of ourselves, take care of our bodies. So I'm so glad that we had this topic in October, Ronnie, and you did a wonderful job last week bringing it forth. And I'm sorry I was unable to join you, but I wanted to make sure that I got this information out about breast cancer, because I know when I had it, I was so afraid.
Yes,
But
and
I
I'm glad
knew
that you.
how important it was, and I had one of the best doctors there were. And thank God I only had to be on medication. I didn't have a mastectomy or any of that. The medication, it was confined, and things went well. And then after you have breast cancer, it's important that you exercise, that you eat properly, and maybe even see a nutritionist, because part of that process when you do have breast cancer is that the doctor hooks you up with a nutritionist, so that you can know what to eat, and and how to eat, and how important it is to your body, and how important exercise is. Because exercise is important to decrease estrogen, get your body back in shape, and keep you strong. But always remember to, it's important that you check your breasts every single day, no matter how old you are.
That's right.
Okay?
Yes. So I am glad that you were. Are you all set with that, Jane?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
I'm glad that you were able to bring this information forward today because, as you say, it was very critical, it was very important, and especially because you have been a victim, of cancer. You're a cancer survivor. So that's even more powerful.
Yes.
Even more, because when someone has gone through something, it's good to let others know, because they could have been frightened by it. But
Yes.
you are, expressing the importance of it, and it helps. It does help, for women and for men as well, because as we know, it can be men as well as women, and young as well as old. So thank you again for bringing that out, and thank you for speaking on it, because nowadays, especially for the month of October, it is breast cancer awareness, but we want people to be able to talk about it, because it helps to relieve them as well as others. So yes, so thank you again. With that being said, what we wanted to do also this evening was to bring forward, just have some conversation, Jackie and I, and we wanted to kind of like reminisce a little bit about Halloween, and how we, as younger people back in our times, how we sort of, celebrated Halloween, and the difference between the way it was then and how it's coming up and being a little different currently. So with that being said, as I reflect back on Halloween, and being that, of course, as you all know, I was the youngest one, my siblings were there. So many times we'll look at Halloween, and when people would go out with their children and everything, I myself, I can't really recall when our parents were there, taking us around. They may have been. I can't really remember that, but I remember my siblings doing it. And at that time, I was very, very young, but they were older than me, and we're all kind of spaced in age. So our parents always instilled in us that we do everything as groups. We did everything as a family. So when it was time for Halloween, and we always had that, I know for myself, kind of dazzling in my head, the Halloween was coming in. I was so excited. And I'm telling you, I remember even when we were in school that day, I could barely keep myself together, because I knew that I was going to go home and they were going to fix me up, put my costumes on, and, take me out for Halloween, and get that trick-or-treat candy. And, oh, of course, the candy was exciting for me. I didn't want no apples and all that kind of stuff, but they gave us candy, and they gave us those large bars of candy. So I remember all of that, and it was powerful, because you had your bonding too, because you were with your siblings. But if it wasn't your siblings, you would kind of like be in your neighborhood kids. They would all come together. Remember that? We would all come together. They would meet in a certain destination, and your siblings as well as your neighborhood children, and they would come together, and we would go from house to house to house. And we had bags, and we were just like, oh, in our glory. Like I said, that day in school, I could not wait to get home, because I knew that, and the thing was, you guys never really like, a lot, back in those days, a lot of us didn't have that kind of money to really go out buying costumes. So we would make our own. We were very creative. Very creative. Sometimes they put stuff on your face, but I remember Mom saying, listen, don't put all that junk on your face. And we couldn't put anything in our hair, because she didn't want like dye or nothing like that. And not all that heavy makeup. We couldn't do any of that. So it was kind of, when I think about it, not kind of plain, but it was more the clothing that you put on. You remember that?
Oh yeah, I remember that very well. And everybody in the neighborhood would go. We would even go outside of our own neighborhood, because it was safe. You felt safe. There was a lot of what you see today. Children being afraid and the parents being afraid. We were all outside of our neighborhoods going. And many times, I remember my brother Claiborne, he would bring up a pillowcase. And he would come home with the whole pillowcase filled with
Yeah,
nothing
yeah.
but candy. But we all went together. Either we were with our friends or you were always with me
Yes.
and my brothers. And we would go from house to house, even outside of our neighborhood, and we
Yeah.
would just be trick or treating. We had made our own costumes, and and the people were just so friendly. Let me see your
Yeah.
costume, they would say, and it didn't matter what nationality you were or whatever.
Mm.
Everybody just loved it, and people were, like I said, they were so friendly to us, and you know, as we went from house to house, we were very respectful, ringing the doorbell. We weren't destructive. We weren't throwing eggs or any of that kind of stuff.
No.
I was
Mm-mm.
surprised as I grew up, and I would, you know, my kids were young, and I would just take them in our neighborhood. But some of the other people were throwing eggs and stuff. I said, well, when did they start doing all of that, being so
Right.
destructive?
Mm-hmm.
Because when we were kids, it wasn't like that. It
It
wasn't
wasn't.
like that.
It
We had so
wasn't.
much fun, and the neighbors, I think, loved it more. Let me see your costume. Come, and they would
Right.
call, "Come, honey, let's see the kids' costumes," you know, and stuff like that. So we really, truly, you know, enjoyed it. And I can remember in school, one of my teachers, I remember in sixth grade, she always had candy for us and things like that. And they would say, have a nice Halloween this, you know, for
Yeah.
tonight.
Yeah.
Be safe and be careful. Watch out for the cars. That was usually the thing that you had to watch out for, was the cars as we were crossing streets and stuff. But as far as people, you didn't have to worry about people being mean and putting nasty things in your candy or apples or whatever. All they worried about was the traffic. Watch out for the cars, because it was dark, you know,
Right.
in Connecticut. But we had such wonderful fun. And like you said, the big candy bars. Oh my God.
Yes. Those
They didn't
big
have those
ones.
little ones.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
They
And
didn't have
do
those little
you
ones.
yeah, do
Yeah.
you recall, I know it wasn't on Halloween, but we would go maybe like the week before, like that Saturday. It was always on a weekend, and I don't remember if it was Saturday or Sunday, because mom worked at New Britain General, and they
Mhm.
would have any of the people that worked at New Britain General, you could bring your kids to the Strand Theater.
Yes.
And remember, they would have like different activities, and they would call off numbers. They had food for us. They had
Yeah.
so much, and it was so exciting because
Yeah.
it was a full day. And
Mhm.
they did the movie too. They showed the
Yeah.
movie, but it was
Yeah.
like about games and the
Hmm.
presents that they provided to us. And they
Right.
just made it a fun-filled day for the people that worked there, for their children, for their families.
That's
And it
right.
was
That's right.
tremendous. You know, it was those kind of things that I can always reflect back on and say, those were the days that people cared. You know, the jobs, they would go above and beyond for
Yeah.
their workers, you know,
Yeah.
and their families, to make sure that Halloween even
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. And it really was. It was just, I mean, all the kids, every child was out walking the street and, hey, hi. I mean, people you didn't even know. You know,
That's
you'd
right.
be so
That's right.
fast and looking at their costume. Oh, that's a wonderful costume you have on, you know. It
Yeah.
was just a wonderful time in New Britain. I mean, we could go all over and
Yes.
and and just have a wonderful, wonderful time, you know. And then when you come home, we had so much candy. Oh my God. Mommy would say, you can't eat all that candy. And
It
she
was
would take some of
tremendous.
it away from us and stuff. And she would hide it. We would have candy all the way to Christmas and past Christmas,
Yeah.
because there was so much candy.
It
But I
was
can remember, and I don't know if you
plenty.
remember this, when we moved, my mom wanted to be with her brothers, and they lived in Baltimore,
Yes.
and her two brothers. And so she talked our dad into moving us to Baltimore.
Yes.
And so we went down there, and mom, after being there, like within a year, mommy said, no, this is not for my children. We need to move back. But
Mm-hmm.
during that year that we were there, we had Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
And I had our Halloween in Connecticut was different than the Halloween in Baltimore. I mean, because like I said, you could go anywhere and everybody was friendly and safe and this, that, and the other, you know, and you never was fearful. But in Baltimore, if you can remember, you were with me and I was with my
Oh yeah, I remember.
girlfriends. And we were at the corner and we were, you know, going in and getting candy and stuff. And you had your bag and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And this kid came along and snatched your bag and you started crying. And I said, what's wrong? He stole my candy. He stole my candy. I said, oh my God. Right. So I said, listen, don't worry. I'll share my candy with you. But I had never experienced anything like that because coming from Connecticut, everybody was friendly and we never had people doing anything like that. So we didn't venture too far from home. But I remember that distinctly because I was like, why would, you know, and he was much older. I said, why would he steal a little kid's candy? I said to myself, but I shared my candy with you. But I say that in Connecticut and in New Britain, it was such a safe time and everybody just loved trick-or-treating and nobody was out of order, you know, during that time. And, but as I had my children and they were in Montclair, New Jersey, you know, being small and everything, and I was in a neighborhood where all the families would come together. We would do certain things, and me and my girlfriend, we would have Halloween cupcakes in the basement and this, that, and the other. After we went, took the kids trick-or-treating, we would still trick-or-treat. We wouldn't go around like we did when I was young, but we went to a few homes that, you know, that we felt was safe and everything. But over time, those things have changed and has made it so difficult for families raising children and going out during Halloween time. You know, I can remember I had never heard of trunk or treat until you told me, you know, and you were saying that they were doing it, and then eventually I heard about it. But things change over time, and I'm not sure if they changed for the better. You know, if people had a better heart about things that are happening in the world and, you know, and how it affected children, we had a good time. We had a better time, I think, than, I mean, the kids now are having a good time because that's all they know is, you know, you go to the church and they have the trunks, you know, trick or treat, and that's all they know. But we had the freedom to go all over and you know, and see everybody's costumes and go to ring the people's bells and the husband or the wife or whatever would come to the door and give you candy, and they would talk to you and say, oh, what a beautiful, and you would be able to go from house to house. It was just a wonderful, wonderful experience, you know.
It was.
Yeah.
It truly was. Yeah, you're right with that. And I reflect back when you were speaking about when we were in Baltimore, what was so different for me was the fact that because we were so accustomed in Connecticut, we did our trick or treat, we did it at night. Halloween was at night. But there we were told you had to go during the daytime. So it was a little odd for us. And it just seemed like, are we really gonna go from house to house and it's broad day like this? But we did it, you know, and as you said, I remember that well, and it resonated on me how this young boy, even though he was much older than me, we had gone up to the top of the hill, and I had a decent amount of candy. I was so excited because I think we were headed back home. And all of a sudden he came by and swoosh, and he grabbed my candy, and all I could do was howl, oh, he stole my candy, he stole my candy. You guys were like, what's wrong with you? I said, that boy. And when we looked, he was all the way to the top of the hill. It was like he had skates on. He was lightning. And I couldn't believe that he had stolen my candy. And I'm like, what in the world? Why would somebody steal my candy? I couldn't believe it. But yeah, that was just a little different for me and for us, period, that we had to do it during the daytime.
Yeah.
But as you were saying, you know, with our own children, it was a difference too. For here, with us here in New Britain, we still had daddy, you know, so he would during the time, now the times have changed. So we would go out and we would go from house to house because around here they still did it a lot. So the children, a lot of times they didn't go by themselves. We
Mm-hmm.
did it with them as the adults, as the parents. And when Harry couldn't do, because as you know, he was working corrections, so he worked in the evening and I worked during the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
And they were excited. They were young, very young, and they wanted to go. And they were boys, and and all over the place, wanting to be here, there, and everywhere. So I wanted to make sure that I had at least a male figure that would go with me. So I
Mm-hmm.
would always tap on Dad, and I said, Dad, do you mind go? He was like, oh yeah, come on. He was always, that type of person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he would go along with us, and the kids, they were so excited, to
Mm-hmm.
know that he was going. He would come by, pick us up, and he would say, come on, we go from door to door. And it was so exciting. Like I said, when Harry couldn't do it, he would step in the place of doing that. But yeah, they had a great times. And then as they got older, of course, that changed too. And
Yeah.
then they started doing it in groups, the
Yeah.
same way we did. And they would go from house to house. And I recall, now they don't want me being involved because they're older.
Yeah.
So Jerome and Cedric would take Christian, and they enjoyed themselves. They really
Yeah.
did. And then they started doing the house parties.
Mm-hmm.
They no longer wanted to go from house to house, because after a while, I don't know if it was just starting to die out because they were older, or people were just getting so kind of mean and mischievous,
Yes.
and they,
Yes.
yeah, doing things they shouldn't have. So they would start going to house parties, and they
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed that as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and nowadays, the way it looks, like you said about the trunk or treat, we just had one at my church, and it turned out tremendous. From what I understand, I haven't gone. I know I was one that would help, because I was over what they call the parent council. So it was myself and a few of the other ladies. We would come together, and and we would put ask people to bring their cars when it first started. It actually started during COVID.
Okay.
COVID was what geared it, because now
Okay.
the kids, they really couldn't, do anything.
Yes.
So I don't know who came up with the idea, but they said, let's do the trunk or treat. And they would tell us, get your cars, and then we'd
Right.
send out messages throughout the congregation, and people started bringing their
That's
cars, and
wonderful.
and then decorating
Yes.
their trunks, and they
Yes.
had tons of candy, and they would
Mm-hmm.
take pictures, and they'd have food out there, and then music was there, and it just started to
Yeah.
become a really, really nice event for your entire community within, my church area. And then people would come from other areas as well, but they
Mm-hmm.
loved it. And it's
Yeah.
still going on, because like I said, they
Yeah.
just did it. And I understand that it was really, really a good shot. They had a great time with it. And
Right.
now a lot of the adult people themselves are just having their own parties, and they're really, really into this Halloween. They have stores around here called
Yeah.
Halloween. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this is crazy. And they have
Gives
all
them
kind of
something to.
costumes. They
I
pay a lot of
know.
money for these costumes, and they're not just like these little costumes. I mean, they put
Right.
in big money. Some
Right.
of them are portraying themselves as being the different actors or actresses, and they have all this big then they have the what do they call it, the masquerade
Nice.
parties,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, candy, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure more than candy, but
Yeah.
they're just
But it
having
gets
their own parties and enjoying it in
right.
that way. But they are spending a lot of money with this Halloween now.
Yeah. But it gives people something to do, and
Yes.
something to look forward to. Because
Yep.
it's not
Yep.
too much out here for people to do anymore,
Right.
especially
Right.
as you get older. But I do know for our kids, for my children in New Jersey, we were also, I didn't take them, but my girlfriend's husband would take the kids to the mall. And that would be all, and that would be during the daytime. He
Yes.
took them to the mall, and the mall had, all the stores had the candy, and the kids came with the costumes and everything.
Mm.
But as you said, nowadays people are now starting. I love it. Even our church has the trunk or treat, and so that has spread it, I think, throughout the country. And like you said, it was due to when they had the COVID,
Yes.
which was a
Yes.
wonderful idea. Um, and I think now, like you said, people are starting to invite people to their homes for Halloween and stuff. But it's a great opportunity to chit chat and
Mm-hmm.
and be with other people, you know, and just enjoy yourself. This is a time people really need to look to do that because the world is so negative, you know, and unkind. And so if people can do those type of things, that's wonderful, you know. And Halloween or Thanksgiving and Christmas, all those things are coming up, and it's important that people engage themselves in those activities. Um, because like I said, there's such negativeness in the world, you know,
Yeah.
and you need something to uplift yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
I've got my candy here, you know, in case any kids knock on my door, I'll definitely have the candy for them to give out, you know, and continue to be a part of that whole process. Um, but I know that my girlfriend's grandson, you know, I don't know if he may participate in it, or his mother may be taking him somewhere for you know, for Halloween. But it's still important that the children are a part of all of that. It makes
Right.
them happy, you know, and it makes the
Mm-hmm.
parents and the adults look at them and be happy too. It just gives you a nice fluffy feeling inside, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, it does.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
definitely does, for
Yeah, yeah.
sure.
So, but as you had said, I mean, our parents never took us trick or treating because I don't know, they never really had to because it was safe. You know, you didn't hear about all kind of craziness going on. As long as
Mm-hmm.
you were together and you were with a group of people and you came back in a reasonable time, you know.
Right.
But mommy used to always look at that candy though. Let me see that that
Right,
candy, you
checking it,
know.
checking it.
Yeah, she would always check it out, you know.
Yeah.
But she knew as long as we traveled as a group, we were okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know.
And I
And New
think,
Britain was just that type of town.
yeah, you're right. I think a lot of times too, back in those days, the parents just didn't do that. And I think they looked at Halloween as being a child's event. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And a lot of things have changed because even now, when you see, even when it comes to sports or anything that is pertaining to your children, you will see that the parents are more involved in that
Yeah,
now. And
yeah,
I don't think that it wasn't anything totally against the way they did it. It's just that's how it was. That's
yeah,
how it was back then,
yeah, yeah.
And like I said, they took that to be something more or less that was for children. And they
Hmm.
wanted us to be protected in a way and telling us, make sure you stay together, make sure
Right.
that one person never walks away from the group. You always cover each other. You come home together, you go together, and you come home at a decent time. We had our time frame as to what time we had to be home. And we made sure that everybody in that group got home
Yeah.
within that time frame. And if we had especially if it was some of the smaller children, and we would make sure that they got dropped off at their door
Yeah.
and they went on in their house, and the parents knew each other. That was
Hmm.
the thing. It was a village. It still was a
Yeah.
village
Yeah.
where we covered one another. So if
Right.
something happened, one of us knew, or we all knew that something went wrong.
That's
So
right.
we were
That's
protected in that way. And I think that was just their thoughts
yeah.
as to
Yeah.
how we were growing up.
Yeah. But you know, it goes back to the fact that when we were younger, we were under our parents was under the philosophy, I think, that it takes a village to
Yeah.
raise children, and so they were very connected with every child. If this
Mm-hmm.
child was doing something wrong, my mother would let the mother know, listen, so and
Oh
so,
yeah,
so
she
and
would.
so. And you'd be like looking at her, Ma, do you have to tell? Yes, I do. She would
Yeah,
say.
that's right.
But that was the philosophy that they lived under. And, you know, and if mommy told somebody about what was happening with their child, they said, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Austin. You know, you go to tell somebody now, you get cursed out. I mean,
That's
you
right.
really, are you who you talking to about my child?
That's
So
right.
like I said, that philosophy of, you know, it takes a village to raise a child sort of dropped along
Yeah.
the way as we became adults
Mm-hmm.
because you don't see that too much nowadays. You really don't, you know.
Right.
Parents are stressed out and they don't want to hear this, that, and the other, and they get angry with each other. But I also, I don't know if you remember anything happening in high school. When I went to New Britain High, I don't recall us dressing up or anything like that. You know what I mean? I don't, because we were like, we were in our teens at that time, 16, 17, whatever. But I bring that up because my son, when he was in high school, I was called there, one of his teachers, about something. I don't remember exactly what it was. And it was Halloween.
Mhm.
And so I leave work, I'm finished work. So about, I don't know. No, I went that morning. That's what it was before I went to work. So I go to the school and everything. So I go to the office, right? And as I'm walking down the hallway, it's a big, huge school. I see, I see these young girls, okay, high school girls with little tutus on and
Mm.
their hair in ponytails with the big bows and everything. And and when you're a teenager, you got the most beautiful legs, right? And I'm walking and I'm saying, why they dressing like this? And I said, it's Halloween. They're allowed to dress with little tutus on, a little blouse, and a little belly showing. I said, what in the world is going on here? And so as they're walking down the hall and I'm walking, the boys were lined it up and they were just whispering, hey, hey, and the girls just strutting back. I said, oh my God. So I get to the office, I open the door, and the secretary was sitting there, and she said, hi, and I told her what. I said, listen, have you seen what's happening out here in the hallway? She said, what you mean? I said, I know it's Halloween. I said, but these young girls are walking around with tutu dresses on. She said, what? She looks out, and she said, oh my God. So she goes to the principal's door, knock on his door. He comes to the door and he said, hey, she said, listen, you need to get out here in the hallway. She said, there's these girls out here with these dresses on, they're inappropriate. He comes to the door and he said, get in here, call your mother, call your mother, call your mother now. You got to go home. Why? And they're like, why do I have to go home? You're dressed. The boys were whispering and they were all in the hallway looking, and them girls had their heels on. They had the little tutu dresses on. I said, oh my God.
It was exciting
so
boys.
Yeah. And he had all them girls to call their parents and come and get them so they could go home and get changed and come back.
Oh
And
my
I
goodness.
left, and I said, and I remember that so clearly. It's been many, many, many years ago, because I think Patrick was a freshman, maybe 10th grade or something like that. But I remember that because I had never seen that before.
Right.
And I said, I don't
Right.
remember our high school. We dressed it up on Halloween like that. We felt we were too grown to be going out on Halloween.
Right.
But these girls were dressed up. They had their heels on, the little tutu dresses. They had their ponytails with the big bows. They looked wonderful. Had the most prettiest legs you ever want to see. And the boys were lining up, whispering and everything. And, hey, hey. I said to the secretary, you need to come out here and see what's going on here. She ran and got the principal. He had them girls lining up. Call your mother, call your mother, call your mother.
That is too
But
much.
I remember that because that was so funny to me. I had never seen that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah.
But Halloween.
So, in saying that, I like I said, I just reflect back on how Halloween was, and it was so much fun back in our days.
Yes.
And of course we want our children and even the young ones now to experience it, you know what I mean? Because that's something that we do, and I don't think when a child isn't able to at least experience some sort of Halloween, I just think that everybody should at least even if it's nothing but one time, at least experience it, because it can be fun, even if it's a Halloween party that the kids are going to. Let you experience it, But it just seems like now a lot of it is kind of dying out, except for the fact that, as you said, the trunk or treat, So and they're engaging in that way, and which is excellent because it's the times. It's the way of the times. And that's how they're looking at it now. And the adults are still having their parties, but they're going, out somewhere and they're having parties in that fashion. So when it comes down to it, they still get to, have fun and gather together and enjoy Halloween, which is excellent because that's what it is. It's just a fun time for everybody, as long
Mhm.
as you are doing things appropriately. Because some Halloween times you see people that want to do cunning and nasty things, and they feel that that's the opportunity to do it,
Yeah,
because they'll put on these masks and go to people's houses and cause havoc to the people, to their
that's right.
neighbors, you know.
Yeah.
So
And isn't
we
that
have to
sad?
kind of be a little careful. And the way it is now, that you're a little nervous in opening your door, especially when you
Mhm.
see older people, you know, so
Mhm.
you do have to be cautious of that.
Yes. 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 And I think that, like I said, the trunk or treat is the best way to do it.
Yeah,
And I think, especially nowadays, because people are so mean, but I think the other way is to have, if you have younger children, have a little something in your home. We used to have
yeah,
cupcakes and candy. After everybody that did their trick or treat, they would come to my house. We would go in the basement and the kids would have, cupcakes and candy and time to relax,
right,
stuff like
right.
that. Who had the best costume on, and so you made it fun.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
really made
yeah.
it fun. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And then afterwards, they were tired. Time to go to bed.
Yes, yes.
So those
Yeah,
were,
so
very good times, and I think that as parents, if you continue to do something like that, but also being very safe, um,
cautious.
it's memories that children will have forever,
That's
because
right.
that's what we have. We have a lot of good memories in regards
Hmm.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to be able to hold on to those good memories, you know.
Yes.
Hey, as I say, you're gonna have a few bad ones too, like I experienced that one, but
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
Maryland. But
Yeah.
believe me, even with that, still something positive came out of
Oh,
it, because I
absolutely.
enjoyed,
Yeah.
just being out there, and then, with
Yeah.
the other children and with you all. And I
Yeah.
still got candy because we all shared.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it still was, like I always say, even though you go through some negative experiences, there's still something positive. You just have to find it. But
That's
there
right.
is a positiveness.
That's
So
right.
I still got candy out of it. And I,
Yeah, yeah, 'cause I
still
gave you
enjoy
some of
today.
mine. I think some of my friends gave you some of
Yeah,
theirs. So it
yeah.
worked out. It worked
Yeah,
out.
it all worked out.
It was okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
we had a good time. So I'm hoping that, this weekend people will have a wonderful time,
right.
trick or treating with their children, or either have a little party at their homes, whatever
Hmm.
they basically choose to do. Have good candy when the kids ring the doorbell.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that sort of thing. I look forward to it. I love it when the kids, I mean, like, who are you? Who are you?
Yeah, yeah.
And
See, and
I
I
give
never
them the
really had the
candy.
chance. People have came here, but majority of the time we're out. We
Yeah,
were out with our own children, so I never really had that opportunity. And now
right,
we don't have a lot of children in our neighborhood, so
right. Yeah,
it's not like they really come
yeah, like they
anymore.
used to. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
It's a
But did
different.
you have anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I
Or
didn't. I just wanted to wish everybody a good evening and everything. And I'm hoping that the information I gave you about cancer is important, and the information you got today, and the information you got last week, and to know how important it is,
yes,
you know,
yes,
in regards to cancer, and taking care of yourself as a woman, you know,
yes, for
and
sure.
teaching your daughters,
Yes, yes,
at a
that's
very
very
early age
important.
what they need to look for. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yes. Well, thank you for that. And I'm going to leave you with a little something. And it's Joshua 1, verse 9, NIV. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you everywhere you go. To God be the glory.
Yes,
Everyone
absolutely.
have a blessed, wonderful, wonderful Halloween. Whatever
Yes.
you're doing, be safe. And please, please note that Jackie and I, again, are on YouTube as well. I want to
Yes.
encourage you all to go on YouTube. We have quite a few videos out there. So please review them at your leisure, but just know that they're there. And it is hashtag sister number two sister, hashtag straight up real talk. And that
Mhm.
again is our YouTube channel. So visit that please as well. And know that we are so thankful and blessed as you guys come in and
That's
God
right.
pours into us, we pour into you all as well. And we will continue doing our lives. And as I always do, I send out the invites. But we just want you guys to come in. Invite your friends
Yes.
because it's all about everybody. Okay? Be blessed and have a
All right.
wonderful
Good
time.
night.
Bye-bye. See you,
Good
Jack.
night. Bye-bye.